I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about how did this happen to us?
How did it happen?
It really can shock you how quickly a relationship can fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think one of the problems when people get into a relationship, they're not really thinking everything through. They're just really liking the person and like spending time with them. But they're not thinking about long-term, how is this going to work? Are we looking for the same things, Are we really going to be compatible together? Because in the beginning, it feels so exciting and amazing. But we tend to take our partners for granted over time. And we think that they're going to stay no matter what happens. But just because somebody agreed to be your partner at one point doesn't mean they're going to stay forever. Even if they said they're going to marry you. Even if they do marry you, the divorce rate is 50-something%,
right.
Close to 60%.
Right. And if we look at the four horsemen, going back to John Gottman, one of them being contempt. I see a lot of times in relationships when it gets to that point of how did this happen? How did we get here from a place where we were so loving towards each other, excited to see each other, to now we dread being in the same room.
Yep.
So I'm not sure where this email is going to go, but I can see getting to that point in a relationship where you're confused even with your own emotions towards your partner.
Yeah.
How did you end up here?
Yeah. It can happen so quickly that before you know it, things are spiraling. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But obviously attachment issues and mental health being a big part of that, right? So let's get into this email coaching, okay? They said, "Hi, Craig. First of all, I want to thank you in advance for accommodating me in your busy schedule. I've been watching your YouTube videos and I have found it helpful for my situation. Anyway, my ex and I started dating at the end of 2019. We became official on his return to my country from being out of the country before the world shut down from the pandemic. We were in a serious relationship for 3 years. I thought he was the one for me. We owned a house and a dog together. Everything was magical up until we started living together."
Oh, how often do we hear this one?
Yep. Moving in together is a huge step, and it really can test the compatibility of two people, right?
Yeah, both practically speaking, how both of your schedules align, but also from an attachment perspective of now the intensity of the relationship has increased tenfold when you're faced, living with each other. You don't have as much of a space to manage your own emotions on your own. You're having to react in live time and not have that space away, your own independent space. So that's huge from an attachment perspective. And it can be very triggering to live with somebody.
Yeah. So a lot of changes when somebody moves in with each other. They said, "We often argue over little things. He tells me he couldn't stand the shouting and the arguments in the relationship, stemming from his childhood filled with fights from his parents growing up." So obviously that could have been triggering for him, and he could have felt like, I don't want to grow up, or I don't want to be in a relationship where it was similar to where I was growing up.
And that's what I meant by it being triggering to move in with a partner. Now you are in a home, whether it be an apartment, an actual house, etc., with a key attachment figure in your life, your partner. And so much can come up from that. And so often we end up replicating a lot of our home environment into our adult romantic relationships,
That's right.
especially when we live together. Yeah.
Let's go on. "I understood that part of his life, but I can't be perfect and arguments are inevitable in relationships. I tried hard to change, but I ended up being unhappy, as he tried to somewhat control me instead of being understanding and compromising in that situation. So you can see there's a lot of frustration going on here.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of good days and some bad days, but he always counted the bad days over the good ones. It went on and started tearing the relationship apart.
I'm already seeing that verbiage there of always. He always. I can imagine that this is probably what some of their fights looked like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right. We always see that.
We do always see it.
Then we decided to book a nice 3-week holiday in last January. We thought going on holiday will reignite the flame once we had. Unfortunately, that is not what often happens, right?
Yeah, and it's the same type of mentality as if we have a kid, then it will repair our relationship. Or if we get married, then it will repair our relationship.
Yeah.
You know, a holiday when 24/7 you are around each other, if you can't communicate, you know, more time isn't necessarily the solution here.
And traveling is stressful.
Oh, yeah.
Flying and delayed flights and packing and unpacking and getting in, you know, the hotel. Or, you know, it can be stressful to travel.
Right.
All right. But the opposite happened. We argued, and then I left him. I flew back home, and we broke up. Oof. On his return, I realized I still wanted to fix us, and even suggested to go to couples counseling, but he rejected. We were both hurting. It was a big decision selling our house. It has to be done, as that's what couples who have broken up do.
There's another type of black and white thinking right there. Of this is what couples that are broken up do, therefore we have to do it. Instead of saying, this is a major decision that I'm making with somebody who was my partner. You know, we recently had a tiff, we broke up, maybe I was impulsive in moving back, or in going back home, maybe not. But not seeing that as a negotiation can be really harmful. This is something we have to do. Who's telling you have to do that? You know, this is a big decision to sell a house. So communication is necessary here.
Yep. But you could see things are very stressful. Things are very tense. And they thought they were going to be doing something good, and it blew up. And so now they're all, I'm sure both are frustrated.
Yeah, and disappointed. You know, the hope and the intention before this trip for both of them was there.
Yeah.
That's the sad part about this. They both wanted the same thing, but when faced with it, they couldn't handle communicating. They couldn't see eye to eye.
Yep. Let's see what happened. We stayed living in the house. I moved to a separate room while we were looking for buyers. Then another hurdle struck my ex. His mom had only been given less than 1 year to live.
Wow.
So now you got a breakup, and now he finds out his mom is terminally ill. I don't know with what. Maybe it was cancer. And now that's going to be like the thing that consumes him. You know, like I'm sure he's going to think about the breakup, but when you have a terminally ill mom, you know, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't think about this breakup. What am I going to do about my mom? We got to get her doctors. We got to see if we can get her other help. We got to find other treatment places. We got to make sure that, you know, we can't find other options that might be better. You know what I mean? They're going to be consumed.
Yeah, and now he's in total survival mode. And some of the symptoms of grief and of depression can be irritability. So I can imagine this spilling over to an already tumultuous relationship is going to be hard. And, you know, I wish that at this point the two of them had at least some type of understanding that they could support each other through times like this, but it sounds like they were barely holding on to this relationship, trying to make it work, trying to figure out the house situation. So now this added stress, you know, I could see being completely overwhelming to him.
Yep. I was devastated. I was crying and felt so sorry for him. He flew back to Europe in March. Then a week later, his mom passed away. Now, I'm not sure how much longer this was in the time frame. It sounds like she died relatively soon when they thought she had about a year to go.
Yeah, it sounded
Right?
like it was much sooner, which I can imagine was a shock. Imagine thinking that you have a certain amount of time with your mother, and then that being cut short, unexpectedly when you already have a timeline.
Horrible.
Ugh.
And so devastating. I again found myself crying. I told him I'm sorry I couldn't be with him as his support person during that time. I was left in my country processing to sell our house. I was also struggling. I couldn't concentrate at work, and I wanted to be with my family who are living overseas. Our house sold a month later. I quit my job and decided to reset my life. My dog and I moved to another country to be reunited with my family, in which I haven't seen in years. It was a breath of fresh air. It felt good being with my family for love and support during this time, although my mind still lingers around my ex and our life we once shared. How could this be happening? Everything happened so quickly, I didn't anticipate we'd be breaking up. Then I decided to open my Facebook for the first time since the breakup. I found out last week he is now in a new relationship. Imagine the shock. It hasn't been that long. The new woman made it official on Facebook. My heart sank. Found myself crying for days. I had so many questions in my head. Did he ever love me? How could he replace me so quick? Maybe he planned this whole breakup, and so on. I was talking to close friends and they said he could be in a rebound relationship that won't last. But it still hurts like hell knowing that he's in someone else's arms. I was again depressed, just like the initial feeling from the breakup. I need help. My parents don't know what I recently found out, as I don't want them worrying about me. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I always wonder where an attachment style developed, and thinking that she can't reach out to her parents for that type of support, doesn't want to burden them, also makes me wonder, okay, who is your support here? It sounds a little bit like this relationship might have been somewhat in isolation. I know that there was moving between countries, and that can make it hard to have some type of a joint support system. I really wish that throughout the relationship they could have reached out to that support system rather than waiting till a crisis to then going home and then having that breath of fresh air of, oh, finally I'm surrounded by people that love and care about me.
What's tough is we don't know the relationship with her parents, so I hesitate to say, tell them what's going on.
Right.
But if you think your parents can be reasonably there for you or helpful to you, then it's something to consider.
And it sounds like there towards the end, she was just doing anything to recover back her sanity, which I can't blame her. I know many of you are probably going to hear the point where she had told him, hey, I can't be your support person. But at this point, it seemed like it was crisis after crisis, and she was just trying to recover as much of herself as possible.
See, I thought she meant that she felt bad she couldn't be a support person.
Yeah, I'm sure she did. I'm sure there was guilt along with that, too.
Let's go on. There's a little bit more. Now my question is my ex in a rebound relationship trying to fill that hole that I left in his life? And if so, is there any chance I could win him back? Is it worth winning him back?
These are good questions.
I don't like the idea of my ex coming back to me after his rebound. It makes me look cheap and desperate, which I disagree with that.
And, part of me is curious as to why that's the main concern after this entire story that we've heard, with major loss, with fighting, with a lot of crying and pain. The idea of him being with this other person and it being a rebound seems to be hitting another insecurity there, and I would be curious to explore more of what that is.
I think she's afraid how it reflects about her, but I don't think it does. I mean, I could see what she's saying, but I don't think most people are going to think like that.
Right. I don't think so either. And from his perspective, at this point, his partner couldn't be there for him emotionally during what I can imagine is one of the toughest times of his life, losing a parent.
Yep.
So him trying to find another support a lot of times in our grief, we do make these emotional connections a lot quicker, and they can intensify sooner than we can even think. So
yes, let's get to that in a sec. I want to wrap up, but because that's a point that I really want to talk about too. I want to keep my dignity and my self-worth, and I want him to realize that he cannot ever hurt me again, even if he comes back.
I'm wondering where all this self-defensiveness is coming from. And I say that from a place of compassion, too. You know, obviously you were very hurt in the relationship in general because of all of the fighting and the arguing. But his decision to now date somebody else, I really don't think was a malicious attack on you.
Yeah, and I don't think it was planned out because it was in a different country.
Right.
He would have had to be planning to go to this country when his mom was terminally ill and all this stuff. No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
But, you know, to have this belief that I want my ex to feel like they cannot ever hurt me again, that's simply not ever going to happen. Anytime you care about somebody, they can hurt you. Mm-hmm. Anytime you're attached to somebody, they can hurt you. So don't go in with this mindset that your ex isn't going to be able to hurt you again, because it's simply not true. Mm-hmm. Anybody you get attached to, you can get hurt. We all risk heartbreak when we open ourselves up to love.
Yeah, yeah.
I still love him and I miss him, but I'm also torn by the idea that exes are exes for a reason. Is there really a second chance in love? Well, let's answer that question in a minute. Mm-hmm. I started no contact in April, right after we sold the house. I have him blocked on WhatsApp and unfriended him on social media. I'm looking forward to what you have to say. Okay, so yes, I definitely think there can be a second chance of love in most situations. Mm-hmm. And you really just want to act like adults and repair things in a healthy way. And so, yes, breakups can be turned around, and whether or not this can be turned around, you know, several different things are going to happen here. Now, the big thing that I thought when reading this is I'm having some empathy for this guy, okay? He lost his mom. And until you lose a parent, it's really hard to understand what that's like, because it really affects you for like a year.
Oh, yeah. Minimum.
You lost your dad when you were young. I lost my mom 10 years ago, and my dad like 2.5 years ago, right? So I know what that feels like. And so I think he was struggling with the breakup and the loss of mom, and so he just was afraid to be alone and got attached to somebody else, because all those chemicals that are going to be released, the endorphins, the oxytocin, the dopamine, he's going to feel amazing, when if he wasn't dating somebody new, he would be probably extremely depressed. Oh, yeah. So for me, this is like a Band-Aid.
Yes, yeah, I could see that. Yeah. But I can also see that there can be genuine healing properties of love and having somebody who cares for you around too. Yeah. I think the feeling of somebody really sitting with you through that grief, it can be so powerful. And in this moment, I'm not sure how this relationship sparked up with this other person, but it is possible that this person did have the emotional capacity to sit and listen and be there in the way that the writer of this email didn't at the time.
Well, at least physically, because she was in a different country.
Right, right.
But I think that try to have some compassion for him as a person. You were with this guy for 6 years. I don't think, we have no evidence that this was premeditated in any way. I think he went there to be there for mom. She passed away a week later. He was so devastated. He rebounded to somebody else, and that's helping him deal with the depression. Yeah. Because dealing with depression when you're losing a parent like that is so difficult.
I also want to note that another possibility could be that was a very impulsive decision. Sure. One of the symptoms of grief that I've seen is that people can act very erratic and very bizarre, very strange. Grief can really distort your reality and make you rethink about life. Yep. And so it could be that, you know, he's exploring this route with this person, and it's more of an impulse, seeing how things go. So
Margaret used to say the hardest thing for people to do is grieve. And so I think here we have a guy that has found the alternative to grieving. Loss of mom and a breakup at once.
yeah.
And so I think this is a distraction. Of course, it's possible it works out with this new girl. He was with this girl for over 3 years, a long time. And now I think he's just kind of using this new relationship as a crutch to feel better in a difficult time. But at some point, he's going to have to deal with this loss, too, of the ex.
Right. And just going back to some of the points that we made at the very beginning of this video, it does seem like there is some contempt there. You know, I'm really concerned with some of the questions that you're asking there towards the end about, you know, is this going to make me seem weak? Is this just going to leave me more exposed? Is he going to hurt me again? These types of questions are coming from a very self-protective place.
Yeah.
And I really do think that his intentions here weren't malicious. I think it's going to be hard to separate that person that he was when the two of you were fighting. Probably some nasty things were said amongst the two of you.
Right.
It's probably over time that you've built up this image of him that, you know, he says hurtful things or that you just can't get along. But I hope that throughout this breakup you are able to stir up some empathy in your heart and see this as a person who has had a major loss in his life. So I'm hoping that you're able to see it somewhat from that point of view. Is it possible for hope in this relationship? Is there a possibility of reconnection? I'm a very hopeful person. I think there is a possibility, but there were very many core issues that were never addressed and continued to build up. Time is not going to be the thing that solves the issues in this relationship. You have learned that from experience.
Yeah. So for now, just leave him be. I think he's struggling with the loss of mom. I think he's in the fantasy land of this new relationship. It probably won't last very long, and then he'll be depressed again. And if he does come back and he's grieving mom and he's still depressed, you better take it very, very slow, because you don't want him just using you as a cushion during a difficult time, and then he feels better after losing mom, and then he breaks up with her again. So I'd be very careful, because people can lean on other people during difficult times, and then when they feel better, they leave.
Well, it's a possibility. You know, I would also be realistic with yourself about what you can and can't give. I know that moment where you had said, you know, hey, I can't support you through this was a really important moment. Maybe it was a moment of you realizing what you do have to offer in that moment and your emotional capacity. So that's okay. Be realistic with yourself, what you can give, what you're willing to give in a relationship versus what you are not. If this relationship were to rekindle, the two of you have to see each other as separate individuals again and kind of deconstruct some of those character traits that you've placed on each other throughout all of this conflict in the relationship. Yeah. It's just not going to work if you see him as this type of antagonist, this type of person who's trying to harm you.
Yeah, you both are going to have to work through some issues here, and then when you get to a better place, you can think more about if he's really a good fit for you and you're a good fit for each other. I don't think it's going to last with the rebound, and I do think you're going to hear from him. So stay focused on the personal growth and get to a good place yourself, and that will give you a much better idea of how this can go in the future, and if he's capable of being in another relationship after, you know, losing mom.
Right.
You know?
And don't be in isolation. You know, grief is not something that has to be reserved for yourself or your immediate romantic partner. That's ridiculous. There's communities of people that are here for support, here to be a listening ear. So if you do have the chance to rekindle, use all of those support so that you don't feel like you have to be the sole provider of his grief relief.
Grief relief.
A little rhyme to end the video on.
All right. So hopefully you found this one helpful. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can get it on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype.
I'm still laughing at grief relief.
Coach Victoria can give you some grief relief.
Can try.
With some Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you're ready.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to do that. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.